well, it can happen easy, and I mean, we do want to be relevant, like you were mentioning. There's a desire that people have to want to know. It seems what a Christian worldview would have to say, or how to think about all these unfolding current events.
Well, some worldviews going to speak into it.
Yeah,
So if
they are.
If a Christian worldview doesn't speak into it, then you're going to understand it through a different lens, right? And then if we're saying that the Christian worldview is the lens in which to understand all things because it is the true lens, then it would be bad for you to understand it through a different lens, right?
Yeah, you'd be deceived.
You'd be deceived. And so, now how far down a rabbit hole we go over what we see, like in a moment versus what's around it, and then making some assumptions, but some, not just some off the wall assumptions, right? But assumptions that are guided by other facts or by other things that seem to go along with that theory.
You're trying to form an overall like worldview and picture, and for things to be consistent within it. And even though some things may seem paradoxical, which makes it difficult to reconcile, like what's really going on here?
Right.
Trump is case in point. Like, how do I comprehend him in a way? And your worldview on things can make that either easier or more difficult, impossible for some.
And
obviously.
if you're uninformed, then people take moments. And here's what's interesting: if you try to take a moment and then show people all the things around that moment, past and present, to help
future implications, consider those.
Exactly. Then you're immediately a conspiracy theorist. But when the media, get this.
Is there a connection between these current events and the rest of history and, everything else?
But then the media, think about this. I just thought about this when you said that. But then the media takes a moment and they spin it however they want to, but they're not conspiratorial, right? They're just lying to you about.
They set a narrative from which you're to understand the things that happen. And I mean, that's why this is an information
through their
war.
worldview.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and not necessarily through their worldview, informed and motivated by their worldview, but according to the worldview they want you to have.
They want
I
you.
would say
that's
a different thing for at least some of them who would be the ones to guide these things from, the higher levels.
So a good example of what we're talking about here is because I walked in and I was like, how are we not going to at least mention the Iran controversy and things that are going on in the Middle East right now? And I said,
or the debate last night, or or the labor strike, or the hurricane,
But I had mentioned, I just said, I mean, how can someone not look at the Iran controversy and look at the $300 billion that the Biden administration gave Iran, released to Iran, and then not go, oh, look, as soon as they got $300 billion, you have all this terrorist activity going on in the Middle East. As soon as we had the worst removal from the Middle East that we've ever seen probably in the history of the United States.
Afghan withdrawal.
Yeah, I mean, look at the damage that's been done. And then you said, oh, no. We're going back to Obama, right? And so, but that's what we're talking about, right?
You can't stop there. You got to go back to, I'm sure some things happened in the 90s, but we can get to we could get to Bush. We got to go through Bush first, and then Clinton, and then Bush again.
That's right.
Then Bush under Reagan, and Bush in CIA. And
but the point,
I digress.
But the point we're driving at is you can go just this far back, or the more informed you are, the better understanding that you're going to have when looking at a specific situation in a moment, right? And that's kind of what I'm driving at, is like the more information is better, more right information is better, right? And then you're able to come up with your own thoughts and ideas. What I find that happens in the world today, we don't have any of our own thoughts and ideas. Everything that we do is, to your point, we take the narrative that the media spins us, whether it's far right fringe conservative media or far left fringe liberal media. Like, at some point, we need to learn how to critical think again and take facts and information and form our own opinions about these things, right?
Yeah.
And so When it comes to, I mean, that's all I think I'm going to say about the Iran situation for this one. Because if we don't, we'll end up having an entire podcast over that. I don't know if you want to say anything about it. Just
Well, not necessarily so much that, but in regard to these other current events and kind of the tension we feel wanting to comment on them immediately, because it is trending, it's important, it's urgent in that way. I mean, who knows? Things will change so much.
Happen by next week with the Iran controversy.
Yeah, for sure. But we also, in the spirit of our new beginning, we do want to, because we recognize an influence and a leadership that a voice would have. You're taking a stand. You're presuming to lead or teach, even in this platform. So you want to be discerning. You don't want to get caught up in the headlines. And people need time, I guess, to process these things too. And so while we could, these things aren't going away. Right. And so we'll be able to just process it. And we need to see it all within the context of this whole, like we're saying. And so
as it develops, again, that speaks into, as things develop, you get more confident in maybe your position that you're holding as it develops out, right?
And I tend to be that way. I don't want to speak too soon or too quickly jump to conclusion. And we're dealing with.
And I'm the opposite. That's why we make a good move. That's why we do well together.
In the middle here. But too, I would say in a lot of these issues, there's a lot of presuppositions. Again, going back to the worldview that we hold going into it. And so that's why, in the conversation that follows here, as we address some of these topics that we're going to today, then they're relevant. It may be kind of on the surface a bit different subject matter, but it's many of the same characters. It's obviously the same world that we live in, that these things are taking place. And what we're saying is they're connected. These things have a relationship.
Sure.
Whatever exactly that is, and we don't presume to know all the details.
Well, you said something. You said leadership earlier, which I think that was a really good one. I mean, the Iran controversy, the IRL strike, right? The union strike. All of these things are leadership problems in some ways, right? I mean, there's other problems along the way, but they are leadership problems. I mean, you have these union workers, which, I mean, and people need to understand, and I'm gonna briefly say this. This is a big deal. Like, this port strike is a big deal. You shut these ports down. I mean, some are estimated to be like, you shut them down for 2 weeks, we will not clear that up until January. Like, this is a supply chain crisis when you shut this kind of port activity down. And it's not only the problem, it's also the demands. Like, when you look at the demands, it's like, wait a second, like, they're not going to meet these demands, right? And they offered them like a 50% raise, and they're like, no, we're not taking that. They want a 77% raise over like 5 years, and they also want automation to be cut out. Like, they want to control automation.
Yeah, it's taking the jobs.
It's taking the
human jobs, and this is, this issue. All of them are going, but the assumptions you have going into these considerations about what's good and right and what direction we should be heading, it brings into conflict, or at least tension, even your own axioms. That maybe as a conservative, how much do we embrace the technology, but the technology's coming from and being pushed by the globalist kind of worldview and agenda and their economic model.
Sure.
So what kind of economic we want the jobs. We've outsourced all our manufacturing. So we got to ship all these containers back here. We got to do these things. Well, what if we employed the automation, but we also just simply brought back all of our jobs, and
we manufacture things here
instead of a shipyard? All these people can work in our manufacturing plants.
That's
and
right.
then but we still, and they can learn about automation. We don't have to be hostile and resentful. So, man, there's just so much in it. We'll talk about it some more
next week.
But, that's a lot goes into these things. We're so driven by the headlines, the talking points, the Twitter feed, whatever it is.
Sure.
So the only way forward is to be committed to the long-term effort. And that's what I want us to be, even if we're touching on the the headlines as we go.
Sure.
We're committed to this long-term effort that's necessary for the transformation that we need. So
No, I like it.
And we need God for that.
Amen.
That's the bottom up, the top down, needs in the situation.
Amen. So from there, women pastors.
Hang on.